Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq, with daily insight on the Nasdaq-100 index, or the NDX, which is made up of 100 of the largest domestic and international non-financial innovative companies listed right here on the Nasdaq stock market. The NDX has been the barometer for U.S. large cap growth and also one of the best performing indexes over the last decade and a half, not to mention one of the most liquid index ecosystems in the world. Joining me this Wednesday afternoon, we have Ryan McCormack, factor and core equity strategist at Invesco, to discuss Nasdaq 100 weekly and quarterly performance as March comes to a close. And Ryan, wow, what a year. Just think of where we were last year to where we are now. And it's just quite remarkable. But with that, let's start with this week, taking a look at QQQ versus S&P 500 performance, as well as which sectors contributed to that performance.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Jill. I think you look at the week, and it's another indicator that the reopen trade is alive and well. You have QQQ and QQQM down 93 basis points against the S&P 500, which is up 1.25%, and the S&P 500 value up 2.67%. Again, see that reopen trade. You have President Biden discussing 200 million vaccines in his first 100 days in office. So initially, the number was 100 million, but that number has since been surpassed, which would kind of equate to all the 200 million vaccine doses by the end of April, which certainly suggests, hey, the vaccine distribution rollout is accelerating. We're starting to see some benefits there. Last week, you had initial jobless claims hitting the lowest level in a year, 684,000 for the weekend of March 19th. And, further kind of pointing to the fact that we're progressing here and we're starting to see some of those restrictions being eased. That's been further confirmed by today's ADP report that showed company payrolls added the most jobs since September, 517,000, and that's up from a revised 176,000 in February. I think most notably in that data point, the most job creations came from the leisure and hospitality industry. So now, as we kind of look ahead, the news today is Joe Biden outlining his $2.25 trillion infrastructure bill, centered around transportation, water systems, broadband, manufacturing, all kind of with the overhang of higher corporate tax rates. So, some time before this continues to get debated, but we'll see how it pans out.
And overall, what did the quarter look like? I think you could characterize like the last 6 weeks as chop more than anything else.
Yeah, I think, you look at sort of the last week and, it's industrials, materials, financial, energy, where QQQ is underweight or no exposure. That's no different from what we saw in the quarter. You had the S&P 500 up 5.79% against QQQ up only 0.25%. So, we've talked about this rotation to value ad nauseum, but, you're seeing it pretty much in the data. The two best performing sectors within the S&P for the quarter were energy, up 32.1% for the quarter, and financials up just over 17%. Recall, QQQ does not have exposure to those sectors. So you see energy being aided by oil. It's up nearly 25% year to date through yesterday. There's an OPEC meeting tomorrow focusing on Saudi Arabia and potentially seeing some production cuts or an extension of production cuts. Today's statement from the preparatory meeting really yielded no results. They did not mention anything on production cuts one way or the other. But obviously that higher oil price certainly helped aid the energy sector. You look at financials; they've been aided by a rising 10-year. I think a lot of folks are pointing to either inflationary fears, which we've covered, or just sort of pricing in broad-based economic growth. It's up 86% year to date. We've climbed from 0.91% on the 10-year to over 1.7%. Some of the volatility around the concessions on the supplementary leverage ratio were outweighed by the fact that banks may be set to resume their dividend increases and share repurchases depending on their stress tests. So, certainly benefits for energy and financial, but now here we come again at the end of the quarter, today being the last day. We're 4 weeks out from another earnings season. So if you look at the earnings results that we saw from some of the QQQ and Nasdaq-100 heavyweights last quarter, they were phenomenal. So, it'll be interesting to see, number one, the results in this kind of choppy quarter, as you had said, but beyond that, any sort of updated guidance that these companies are given as we continue to progress against the vaccine and move towards full reopening of the economy.
All right, Ryan, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.